당은 가서 감공마 수다 수메 감기 지금 동아시아바델리아 아니 델리아는.
Good morning. So last night we looked at the sufferings that are experienced by beings in the two upper realms, namely the form and formless realms. And whilst beings born there do not experience the suffering of physical mental happiness, the suffering of physical mental pain, they nevertheless do experience all pervasive suffering of conditionality. So no matter how long they abide in their realm, enjoying the happiness of concentration, due to the power of previously accumulated contaminated karma, death will come, and death will be followed by rebirth in a realm lower to where they currently abide. The world we live in, this is a world that has a material basis. So this planet Earth, this Earth which is inhabited by humans, animals, and some unseen beings. But those born in the form and formless realm, they do not require a physical abode such as what we have. So this, maybe you could say, a planet comprised of matter. They do not require such a material abode. And last night I also presented how a desire realm, a human or God, can attain rebirth as a form or formless realm God. So the cause that they need to cultivate is to develop the concentration of the first, to develop the concentration that is the concentration of the first concentration. So this is a prerequisite because by developing the level of concentration equivalent to, or that the level of concentration that is the concentration of the first form, the first concentration of the form realm, one needs to suppress the coarse manifest afflictions of the desire realm, or suppress the manifest afflictions of the desire realm, which are coarse. And this is done by, and this is a term as the translator didn't know last night, this is the correct translation, this is done by examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. So what this means is that in this particular instance, although the process is replicated as one progresses, in this instance, the meditator reflects on the coarse aspects of the desire realm and the peaceful aspects of the first concentration, recognizing how unlike our experience here in the desire realm, beings born in the first concentration have long lives, and long lives where they experience such incredible happiness, with the happiness of concentration. And the afflictions of the desire realm, these are suppressed, so therefore they are not experienced, and the resulting other forms of suffering that come with those afflictions. So in this way, by seeing the faults of the desire realm and the benefits of the first concentration, then the practitioner develops their single-pointed concentration, their calm abiding, into the concentration that is the first concentration of the form realm. And when death comes for this practitioner, then they will die, and due to the power of these karmic imprints, they will be reborn from the desire realm into the first concentration of the form realm. So this process of examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm, so again, that was the term I didn't know last night. So this process, one continues to engage in, so as to, if one wishes, of course, to develop one's concentration from the first concentration to the second, and from the second to the third. So the process is the same. One looks at the current state one has attained, recognizing its unpleasant aspects, and sees the more favorable aspects of the level above what one has attained. And in this way, one develops the next level of concentration. So in this is the same process to progress from the desire realm to the first concentration of the form realm, and to progress from the first concentration of the form realm to the second concentration of the form realm, and in fact right through not just the 4 levels of the form realm, but also through the 4 levels of the formless realm, right up to the 4th level of the formless realm, the peak of cyclic existence. So all of these various levels of concentration and absorption can be achieved by a human or God of the desire realm. So whilst they are a being of the desire realm in the body of a being of the desire realm, but developing these minds of the form realm and then the formless realm. And when death comes, they will take rebirth in that level, that respective level that they of the form or formless realm that they have attained. The second approach can be, let's say, a being of the second concentration in the form realm. So a God of the second concentration of the form realm, they can develop their concentration further into the third level of the third concentration or the 4th concentration, or into the formless realm. So that is another means of progression. It doesn't have to be done in the desire realm. It can be further developed from the form realm too. This approach of examining the coarse and the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm, this is a method common to both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. In other words, non-Buddhists too engage in such meditation. So there's a method that is common, what I've just presented is the method that is common or shared with both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Buddhists, though, would be wanting to develop mental paths that lead to liberation and enlightenment. So therefore, their motivation to develop calm abiding would be in accordance with the wish to develop a path and progress towards liberation and enlightenment. So they would strive to develop calm abiding, and having developed calm abiding, they would reflect on, they develop calm abiding further and develop the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, and they would then reflect on the 4 Noble Truths. So this is the method, again, it's the second term I didn't know last night, of examining the aspects of the 4 Noble Truths. So here they are not engaging in the course and the examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm, but they rather are examining the aspects of the 4 Noble Truths. So they reflecting principally on true sufferings and true origins, and thereby the need to cultivate true paths in order to achieve true cessations. And in this way, they develop calm abiding and meditative insight, develop definite emergence, and the path of accumulation. In order to progress from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation, they need to have, with this same mind, the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, they need to realize emptiness. So it's a far subtler object than that of cultivating definite emergence. But when the union of calm abiding and meditative insight can realize selflessness or emptiness, that far subtler object, then progression is made from the path of accumulation to the second of the 5 paths, the path of preparation. So the path that is, the technique that is common to Buddhists and non-Buddhists is called examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. Buddhists, though uniquely, would engage in the technique called examining the aspects of the 4 Noble Truths. There's some similarity in terms of understanding or maybe approach between the two. So the common one is referring to examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the respective realm. So there's these terms here, peace and coarse, peaceful and coarse aspects. This is, that understanding is utilized when examining the aspects of the 4 Noble Truths, so the uncommon technique that are solely of Buddhists. But it's not in relation to varying realms, but it's in relation to being bound in samsara and being liberated from samsara. So when the Buddhist is looking to cultivate concentration by means of examining the aspects of the 4 Noble Truths, they'll look at the coarse aspects, and here coarse means faults. Normally it's coarse means as like rough, not fine, but here coarse means faults. So examining the faults of cyclic existence by means of reflecting on true sufferings and true origins. And they examined the peaceful aspects of liberation through examining true cessations and the paths by which to gain them. So this is the meditation on the Four Noble Truths. So when the practitioner is meditating on the coarse aspects of cyclic existence, I'll meditate on true sufferings and true origins, and how to meditate on true sufferings. We've looked at some of this last year when he looked at the sufferings of the lower realms. And the rest of the presentation, the majority of the presentation, we have just finished looking at now, whereby one looks at the general sufferings of samsara as presented through the eightfold presentation of suffering, the sixfold presentation of suffering, the threefold presentation of suffering. And then we looked at the individual or the particular sufferings of the higher realms, of the human realm, then the desire realm, God realms, and then the form and formless realm, form and formless God realms. So it's through meditating on suffering in these ways, by means of these various presentations, as well as then true origins, and then true paths and cessations, that the practitioner engages in this method to cultivate concentrations, the method called examining the aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So now we're about to start the next chapter. So the link between what we've been looking at for some time and what we are about to start is that we've been reflecting on the first truthful areas, true sufferings. We reflected on the tremendous suffering that beings in the lower realms experience, but recognize too that nowhere in the higher realms is one free of suffering, whether it's in the higher realms of the desire realm as a human or God, or in the upper realms as a form or formless realm God, one still experiences suffering. In particular, through this presentation, one comes to recognize that feelings of suffering, of course, are suffering, but feelings of happiness merely mask suffering, and neutral feelings too end up in suffering. And by reflecting well on suffering, this is coming to know suffering. So the Buddha said the first noble truth must be known, the second must be abandoned. So by this way, we come to know suffering, that all contaminated feelings result in, or either suffering or result in suffering, or end up in suffering rather. So in this way, one comes to know suffering. This then leads to the deep yearning to know what is the cause of suffering, the origin of suffering, in order to know what to avoid and eventually abandon so that one never has to experience suffering again. So the first noble truth is to be known, the second is to be abandoned. So this second truth, true origins, is the origin of our suffering, the origin of our individual samsaras. So this then is the next presentation. So now we're turning to the text. So we're at page 167, and this is titled Mental Afflictions. So the actual title in the Tibetan is Contemplating the Stages of Involvement in Cyclic Existence, the Origins. So this is then True Origins, and it has 3 points. The first is the title of this chapter, Mental Afflictions, how the mental afflictions arise. And then the next 2 points are in the 13th chapter on page 173, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How karma is thereby accumulated and how you die, transmigrate, and take rebirth. Here we now come to look at the origin of suffering. So origin or causes of suffering. And this is contaminated karma and our afflictions. Of the two, contaminated karma and afflictions, afflictions are the primary source of our suffering. So what are afflictions? So this will be presented over the page. There, it's presented by a list of 10. So if you look over the page at 168, we have the 10. It's translated as desire, but it's attachment. Then anger, pride, ignorance, doubt, view of the transitory collection, view holding to an extreme, the view holding a bad view to be best, the view holding ethics and religious conduct to be best, and wrong views. So at the top of this chapter on page 167, we see this chapter comprises of one main outline, how the mental afflictions arise. So we'll look at that now. There's an introduction on this page, and over the page starts its 3 subdivisions. So how the mental afflictions arise. Although both karma and mental afflictions are necessary as causes that establish cyclic existence, the mental afflictions are primary. So here we have both causes of samsara mentioned, and of the two, mental afflictions are primary. So this introduction to the outline how mental afflictions arise is presenting and now answering or explaining why mental afflictions are primary. So this part of the page is about why the mental afflictions are primary. So reading from the text, this is because if there are no mental afflictions, even though there is karma beyond counting accumulated previously, and then the Tibetan skips ahead, just as a sprout is not established from a seed that lacks humidity, soil, and so forth. So read it again, just the order of the translation of the segments of the section are different from the Tibetan, hence we for now are skipping a bit. So the reason here is given, this is because if there are no mental afflictions, even though there is karma beyond counting accumulated previously, and then the illustration is given, just as a sprout is not established from a seed that lacked humidity, soil, and so forth. So this if you have a seed, but it's not planted in the correct soil with the right amount of warmth and humidity, it's not going to sprout. Likewise, with karmic seeds, even though on one's continuum there may be an abundance of karmic seeds, without the ripening factor or the ripening condition of the ripening condition of the afflictions, those karmic seeds will stay dormant. They cannot ripen if the afflictions are absent. In the next part of the sentence, just up a little, so this is now in Lama Tsongkhapa explaining the illustration. Since the cooperative conditions for karma are absent, the sprout of suffering is not established. So again, as explained, the karmic seeds remain dry as long as they cannot be moistened by the ripening conditions of the afflictions. So if we're looking here in this paragraph, the end of the second line, the second sentence, this is because. So here, 2 reasons are presented why afflictions are primary. The first reason, which has just been mentioned, looks backwards. So past accumulated karma cannot ripen if the afflictions are absent. Now, the second reason is presented, but it is forward-looking. So reading on from the text, it is also because if the mental afflictions are present, even without any previously accumulated karma is immediately accumulated anew, and future aggregates will be appropriated. So this is then the second reason, and it's forward-looking. So if one imagines the theoretical possibility of being completely free of karma, when an affliction ripens, immediately in that moment, further karmic imprints will be accumulated, which will lead, and being contaminated, they will lead to the appropriation of aggregates. So the second reason is forward-looking. The summary meaning here is, wherever one is born in samsara, whether in the lower realms or the higher realms, whether the higher realms are in the desire form or formless realm, wherever one is born in samsara, the reason remains the same, karma and afflictions. And wherever one is born in samsara, of these 2 common afflictions, the afflictions remain primary. And the reasons are, as presented here, twofold. One, backward-looking, in that previously accumulated karmic imprints are ripened by the afflictions. And if afflictions were to be absent, previously accumulated karmic imprints could not ripen. That's the first reason. And the second is forward-looking. And that is that through the arisal of the afflictions, karma is immediately accumulated. So for these 2 reasons, we recognize that of the two causes for uncontrolled rebirth in samsara, karma and afflictions, afflictions are primary. Lama Tsongkhapa then quotes from the commentary on the compendium of valid cognition. For those who have passed beyond craving for existence, karma cannot impel any more rebirths, because the cooperating factors have been exhausted, and for if craving is present, they will reoccur. Look at the first two lines. For those who have passed beyond or transcended craving for existence or samsara, karma cannot impel. Normally we say propelling, as in propel a rebirth, or others say throw a rebirth. Karma cannot impel or propel or throw any more rebirths. And the reason for this is as presented above. For a being who has passed beyond craving for existence, meaning they no longer have afflictions, although they have karma on the second line, they will have karma on their continuum. That karma, not being able to encounter cooperative conditions, it cannot ripen, and therefore they will not take rebirth in samsara again. And then the next single line, for if craving is present, they will reoccur. So we see in the first line above, craving is absent. So this is for someone who has transcended or passed beyond samsara. They no longer have afflictions. Whereas if the affliction of craving is still present, now the fourth line, they will reoccur. In other words, previously accumulated karmic imprints will be ripened, propelling rebirth. So this will happen. And this is the case wherever one is in cyclic existence. And it's not just the case for us in the desire realm, within the lower or higher desire realms, also for those in the form and formless realm, those gods too. If their craving has not been abandoned, they too will take rebirth again, because they are still bound in samsara. They are not liberated from samsara. And their rebirth, propelled by the karmic imprint, ripened by craving, will lead to rebirth in a realm lower than what they are in. So we can link what we've seen here to what we looked at last night, in that a desire realm being, seeing the great benefits of developing not just calm abiding, but the first concentration, then they'll strive by means of the method of examining the peaceful and coarse aspects. They will achieve the first concentration. And so they now are a desire realm being, in the desire realm with a desire realm body, but they've achieved the mind or the first concentration. And as said last night, when death comes, their rebirth will be in the form realm, in the first concentration. And the reason for that is because in order, or through achieving the first concentration of the form realm, the desire realm afflictions are suppressed. This means when death comes, there are not desire realm afflictions to propel a rebirth. Rephrase that. There are not manifest desire realm afflictions to propel the next rebirth, or as translated here, impel the next rebirth. But the being is not free from samsara. They have attained the first concentration of the form realm, and therefore the afflictions of the first concentration are manifest for them. Those afflictions will ripen their propelling karmic imprint, which will lead to rebirth in that first concentration. This means without desire realm afflictions, or at least without the manifest, rebirth cannot be in the desire realm, or cannot be taken in the desire realm. So again, in this 12th chapter, in True Origins, there are 3 points, one of which is in the 12th chapter. So we've looked now at the introduction to that 1 point, how the mental afflictions arise, which is presenting that the afflictions are principal, primary, rather than karma. Now we continue over the page on top of 168. Therefore, it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes to the mental afflictions, and that depends on knowing the mental afflictions, which is why you should become conversant with them. Starts with the word therefore. The therefore then indicates that reasons have just been given. And the reasons, again, that why afflictions are primary is that if afflictions are absent, past accumulated non-virtue will not ripen, and no new non-virtue can be accumulated. Then one is liberated. Whereas if the afflictions are present, those afflictions serve as the cooperative conditions to ripen past accumulated karma and leads to the accumulation of further karma. So this then makes clear why afflictions are of great importance. The abandonment of the afflictions is of great importance. Therefore, it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes to the mental afflictions. So we've understood now that the afflictions, it's imperative one abandons the afflictions in order to gain freedom from the suffering that we've been meditating on for a while. But so therefore it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes to the mental afflictions, and that depends on knowing the mental afflictions. So this part of the sentence is the introduction to what will follow. In that, in order to abandon the afflictions, one has to rely on the antidotes, but one needs to know what one is applying antidotes towards. What are these afflictions? One cannot abandon something if one cannot recognize it. So that depends on knowing the mental afflictions, which is why you should become conversant with them. And this nice word, conversant, usually would be translated as you should become learned or knowledgeable with regard to them. As we saw on the previous page, True Origins has 3 outlines. In this chapter, chapter 12, is 1 outline, and the other 2 come in the next chapter. This 1 outline has 3 sub-points. So now we've had the introduction to this outline, the manner in which the afflictions arise, and now we come to the 3 sub-points. So reading from the top of page 168, the actual identification of the mental afflictions, which is what we'll start to look at now, the stages by which they arise on the next page, and the faults of the mental afflictions over the page. Looking at the first subpoint, the actual identification of the mental afflictions. This is 10 points. So 10 points in that the afflictions are presented as 10 here. So now to look at them each individually. The first of these, desire. So I've changed desire to attachment because that's just how it's usually translated. The first of these, attachment, and just to say it's the same word. The first of these, attachment, observes an attractive, pleasant, external or internal object and is subsequently attached to it. To illustrate, just as oil that has penetrated into cloth is hard to remove, it is also difficult to separate attachment from its object as it clings to it and intensifies. So first, we look at the objects that one is attached to. So what the things are that one is attached to. So going in the order of the Tibetan, external or internal. So external refers to something, in this context, something external to the person. So this could be one's home, the natural environment, anything external to oneself, to the individual person themselves. Then the internal object refers to the person, so their body, as well as their inner world, their thoughts. So one can have attachment in relation to what one is thinking about, and that would be included in inner, in that the object that one is attached to is one's thought, and therefore it's inner. So this is the meaning of external or internal objects. The first of those, attachment, observes an attractive or pleasant external or internal object. So I've explained external and internal in relation to the person, and the object is also seen as attractive or pleasant. And here we can understand these 2 terms as having the same meaning. One is attached to something, one finds attractive or pleasant. Then it continues with an illustration. Just as oil that has penetrated into cloth is hard to remove, it is also difficult to separate attachment from its object as it clings to it and intensifies. So this is how one experiences attachment, in that it almost seems to seep into its object, going deeper and deeper. In other words, that the attachment really seems to cling to the object in a way that it becomes almost impossible to stop thinking about it, so to separate one's mind from the object. There's another term that one can experience in a way that has some similarity to attachment, though it's not attachment, and that is it's usually translated as aspiration, in that one's mind has turned towards something and desires it. So in English here we would say you desire it. So this particular mind, though, would not be called one of attachment, but one of aspiration, where one aspires for something. So other translations will be yearning for something. But so in English, what we call love for our loved ones, this is usually attachment, in that it becomes very difficult to separate this our attachment for this person. First, just to say, as an aside, in relation to the previous point, so the attachment one has for a loved one in a romantic relationship. In Tibetan, the word love isn't used like we do in English, but it's actually the word like, that you like someone. So that shows the different way of relating to romantic relationships. Now to come back to what Genla just said. Attachment for something has an immediately preceding condition of another consciousness, another mind. And this is improper mental engagement, or I think it's also called improper mental attention, or inappropriate mental attention maybe. Anyway, improper mental engagement. So the reason one is attached to something is because one finds it desirable. There's this I want. And this wanting comes about due to relating to this the thing that one is attached to in a way that is not in accordance with reality. In that, the role of the preceding condition of improper mental engagement is it exaggerates the good qualities of what then one becomes attached to, what then wants and is attached to. So take a flower. We have the color and shape of a flower appearing to one's mind. Improper mental engagement then exaggerates the good qualities of that flower, leading to the reaction of I want. So this is desiring the flower, being attached to the flower. So here, attachment is preceded by improper mental engagement, which distorts the object, exaggerating its good qualities. Now to the second, that of anger. And I've just changed one word here to hopefully make it a little clearer. Anger is a hostile attitude. It is an unruly mind that, upon observing an origin of suffering, such as sentient beings, suffering, weapons and thorns, and so forth, intends to inflict harm on those objects. So with all of these, just to say as an aside, the order of the English and Tibetan is slightly different. So there'll be a bit of hopping around in each of the afflictions. It starts with the objects that in relation to which anger arises. So the Tibetan starts there. So again, this commentary starts there. So I changed the translation from basis to origin because these are the objects towards which anger may well arise. So we see there sentient beings, suffering, pain, difficulties, problems, all would be included there. Weapons, thorns, and so forth. So these should be quite clear in terms of sentient beings. This is all too often experienced by what others say towards us or do towards us or prevent us from doing. Weapons and thorns, so these would be things that cause us harm, physical harm and therefore pain. Weapons and so forth. And then so forth we should take to refer more to the inner world. So our wishes not being fulfilled, meeting the wanted, separation from the wanted, and so forth. So these are some of the objects towards or from which, in dependence on which, anger can arise. So anger is then described as being an unruly mind, a hostile attitude. So unruly mind is that the mind is greatly disturbed, and the hostile attitude is that there is this wish to cause harm towards. So then to the third, that of pride. Here I've needed to add a little bit in the second line. Pride is a puffed up mind based on the view of the transitory collection. It observes one's external or internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad, and engages them with an aspect of superiority. So I'll read it again because there's this bit added. Pride is a puffed up mind based on the view of the transitory collection. It observes one's external or internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad, and engages them with an aspect of superiority. So pride is based on the view of the transitory collection. So we'll come to that shortly, the view of the transitory collection. But it's that one grasps at an I and therefore also a mind. So it's having this I and mine. Grasping at an I, one has pride in relation to oneself, as well as what is mine. So what belongs to the self. So this is the meaning then of based on the view of the transitory collection, one has pride, and pride observes one's external or internal qualities. I don't know where this level comes from. So external or internal qualities. So this, again, external to the person, internal being the person, so body or mental qualities that are high or low, good or bad. So then this would be, for example, seeing oneself as better than someone else, stronger than someone else, so higher than someone else, better or good or bad than someone else. So the words that were missed, one's external, internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad, and engages them with an aspect of superiority. And then, as the translator, I've just missed this, so again, I explained the transitory collection, I and mine. So I is in relation to oneself, mine what one owns. So this can be one's car, one's home, whatever possessions one has, but also one's inner qualities such as one's education and so forth. All of these things can be causes by which pride arises, or objects by which pride arises. And these words that were omitted, based on high or low, good or bad. So this is ways in which we can feel superior to others. So this can be very broad, can be in relation to one's education, general education or education in relation to another topic, seeing oneself as superior to someone else. Or it can be many of the isms, say race, for example, seeing one's race as superior to another. And then, or in terms of one's physique or aspect of one's physique, seeing oneself as superior to someone else, or in terms of the plethora of our possessions, seeing a possession as being superior to what someone else has. So all of these then are objects in relation to which pride can arise. Pride is an affliction that is very close to us in that it arises regularly and very easily. And this makes it quite difficult to recognize just because of the deep familiarity we have with it. So where one can recognize it is firstly, again, these words that are missing. It observes one's external or internal qualities that are high or low, good or bad. So high or low, good or bad, this is very broad. So when one may think, and again, it doesn't have to be all pervasive, but in a particular instance, for example, where one thinks, oh, my way of thinking on this topic or in this instance is superior to that person. So it doesn't mean in all instances one sees oneself as better, but right now, certainly. So it arises very easily, and watch for it. And you'll recognize that all too often it comes with this, my whatever is superior to that person or those people. And where it may be easier to recognize in hindsight is when anger has arisen. Again, anger from frustration, annoyance, all the way up to rage and hatred, all included here. That anger all too often comes from our pride being challenged. For example, you're with someone and you're going out to a restaurant and you're deciding where to go and you have different wishes and you go where they're going. But if you have a bit of pride in relation to this person, you may be a bit annoyed that you are having to do what this person wants. And this annoyance comes from a view of superiority. And the superiority could just be you see yourself as more important than them, or it could see that your knowledge of what will be a better meal is superior to them. So in these ways, pride comes about. Really, in these ways, you can come to recognize how readily, how easily pride arises. And all too often when anger is associated with pride, it will be stronger. In the same way, previously we looked at the affliction of attachment and aspiration as can be appearing similar, but one is in accordance with what will lead to happiness and one will not. So one's in accordance with reality and the other is not. So too here with pride and confidence or self-confidence. These two can seem similar, but they are quite different in that pride comes together, is preceded by improper mental engagement in the same way that attachment is. And improper mental engagement, whether with pride or with attachment, it serves to exaggerate the good qualities of something. Whereas confidence does not come together with improper mental engagement. It's confidence or self-confidence. So with self-confidence, you can recognize a good quality that one has, but it's not being exaggerated. So therefore, it is being in accordance with reality. It's a clear recognition, I have this quality, but it's not exaggerating it. If there's exaggeration, then pride is likely to follow. So therefore, self-confidence differs from pride in that it acknowledges our abilities without inflating them. This then we come to ignorance. Ignorance is afflicted not knowing, owing to a mind that is unclear with regard to the nature of the Four Truths, actions and their effects, and the Three Jewels. Ignorance is presented in relation to three objects, that one does not know them, one's mind is unclear with regard to their meaning. And the three objects are the Four Noble Truths. Just to say, it's an aside, in Tibetan it's almost always just the Four Truths. In English we always say the Four Noble Truths. And then action and the effects, cause and effect, karma, and the Three Jewels. So in relation to these three objects, ignorance is a mind of not knowing. It can be ignorance of not knowing or confused ignorance in relation to these three, because the mind is unclear with regard to their nature. And the fifth is doubt. Doubt is to observe those three objects, the Four Truths and so forth, and think, do they exist or do they not exist? Are they a certain way or are they not? Doubt in relation to the Four Noble Truths. One may think, for example, true sufferings really is, let's say, the suffering of transient happiness or pervasive suffering of conditionality. Is that really suffering? Or in terms of true origins, or is it really from karma and afflictions that one suffers? And is cessation, in terms of true cessation, is this possible or not? Is it possible to bring this to an end? And in terms of true paths, one's doubt may well be as to whether those true paths will be effective or even can be developed at all. Now coming to five that are views. The view of the transitory collection. So elsewhere this is translated as perishing aggregates. The view of the transitory collection is an afflicted intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and views them as a self or belonging to a self-thinking, I or mine. So reading it again, the view of the transitory collection is an afflicted intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and views them as a self or belonging to a self, thinking I and mine. So here the I or the self is grasped at as being truly existent, and what belongs to the self, and therefore having a truly existent self, there is that which belongs to the self, so the mine. The appropriated aggregates, something we looked at a few weeks ago, is what the aggregates, the physical and mental aggregates, that are appropriated or taken due to all-pervasive suffering of conditionality. So the lower tenets will say that these aggregates are the self, and some may say that the self is even the form aggregate, but the majority will say the consciousness aggregate. So amongst the 5 aggregates, form, feeling, differentiation, compositional factors, and consciousness, the majority of the vast majority of the lower tenets will say that the consciousness aggregate is the self. So there's a relationship between the fourth and the sixth, so ignorance, and the view of the transitory collection, in that the view of the transitory collection is ignorance, or is an ignorance, but ignorance isn't necessarily the view of the transitory collection. In other words, ignorance is broader. So in particular, in this division in 10, we see ignorance in relation to 3 objects, but in other contexts, ignorance certainly would include the view of the transitory collection, because as we see in the first line, it is an afflicted intelligence. The text continues to explain this term transitory collection. Transitory means impermanent, and collection means multiple. So this is then in relation to the aggregates. So the aggregates are multiple, and they all change momentarily. So this is then the meaning of transitory and collection. The text continues, so the object that it views is a mere impermanent and manifold phenomenon. It is given the name view of the transitory collection to indicate there is no permanent unitary person. This last sentence here is given the name view of the transitory collection to indicate that there's no permanent unitary person, or permanent meaning unchanging, unitary meaning single person. So this is in relation to non-Buddhist views. So we've come across this very recently now in Shantideva's teachings, where there are non-Buddhists. So I think this was this past week. We looked at non-Buddhist understanding of the person, and they say the person is unchanging. So this is contrary to the Buddhist view, which is that impermanent phenomena all change momentarily, and that the person is also not singular or unitary, in that it is dependent on parts. So therefore, the view of the transitory collection is not in accordance with reality, because the person is impermanent and dependent on parts. So therefore, cannot be permanent or unchanging and unitary. This view of the transitory collection is asserted by certain non-Buddhists, holding that the self is singular or unitary and permanent, unchanging. Buddhists do not accept this. They hold that this view is actually an afflicted intelligence, is not in accordance with reality. Rather, the self does change momentarily and is a collection of parts. It is not singular. The self certainly exists, but it does not exist as a permanent unitary person. So of the 10 afflictions, of this presentation of afflictions into 10, we've looked at half of them. So these afflictions, none of us are a stranger to them. They abide within. Attachment, anger, doubt, ignorance, as well as the view of the transitory collection and pride. They've been presented here in brief, in a way that's easy to understand. For us, we need to develop mindfulness of our inner workings, to be aware of the arisal of the afflictions so that we can abandon them. And this was presented at the top of the page. Therefore, it is crucial that you rely on the antidotes, but to be able to rely on the antidotes, one has to, as it then says, become conversant with the mental afflictions. So to rely on the antidotes depends on knowing the mental afflictions. So this presentation here is giving one the knowledge so that one can come to know the mental afflictions. But merely knowing this intellectually, understanding it is insufficient. One needs to recognize them within. Then one can apply antidotes and eradicate them. So we can conclude there for this morning, but there's certainly time. So if you have questions, then please feel free to ask. Venerable Lobsang.
Is it the same case for being in the form wrong, giving to the formless wrong, that they would only attain it inside mentally and not lose the body, or would they actually lose the body?
So a being who's abiding a God in the form realm, who's wanting to develop their absorptions of the formless realm, would they be able to develop them while still in the form realm and developing the absorptions of the formless realm, but still be in the body of a form realm until death comes? Exactly that. So you could have the concentration or the absorptions of the formless realm whilst abiding in the form realm, with form in the form realm. Yeah. So the same as with the desire realm being. Andy?
Is this term unitary just the same as partless?
So is unitary the same as partless? So singular or unitary means not having parts or not dependent on parts. So yes.
But then surely single can be, phenomena can be either single or multiple.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you take the phenomenon as just self, take the phenomenon itself, it's a single phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like cat and dog is a multiple phenomenon.
So being a single phenomenon, not dependent on parts. Yeah? Because that the meaning, because you asked, is the meaning, is it partless? So yes, it has no parts, it's not dependent on parts.
No,
that is the meaning of singular.
I thought there was a difference between single and unitary.
Well, the word is one. The Tibetan word is one. So how many fingers am I holding up? One, and that's the word. But we can ask, because there is the question, but I am one person. So does that mean I'm not singular? Well, I must be singular as I'm one person. Because this is what you're saying, right?
But it's single, it doesn't mean that it's still not dependent on parts. It still has parts, even though it's single.
So therefore it's not single, because it's dependent on parts. That is the meaning of single. Okay. Just a sec, Steve, I'll just at least inform Ken. Then also inchige doklat chiksena, then also chik lokani yole, then
So the view of the transitory collection, is that also what we know as ignorance of self-grasping?
Mm-hmm. So is the view of the transitory collection also the ignorance of self-grasping? Depending on the context, it certainly can be. So the view of the transitory collection is in relation to the I and the mind, and this then is related to as the I as being inherently existent, and there being a mind that is inherently existent. So that would be the same. But where it can be different is when it's in relation to something other than the I or mind, in that all phenomena appear to us as being truly existent, causes, results. So there we wouldn't talk about the view of the transitory collection. We talk about grasping at inherent existence. So the view of the transitory collection is in relation to this transitory collection of the aggregates. Okay. Venerable Lobsang.
I do have another question, but I just, on Andy's question, I think it's often not clear that the person and the parts can be one entity, but not one. I don't think that concept's clear in our, education. So it gets us sometimes.
So, just to get it right, so it's not always clear that the person and the aggregates can be one entity, but not one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it can bring to 6 land.
So I can say something on that at another time. Yeah.
With relation to the course afflictions not being manifest at death and taking a form of birth, is it actually a possible problem that we could take a form of birth in an unwanted way because we've not attained definite emergence, then in effect naturally take a form of birth which would be unwanted? Is that a possibility, or is that just...
So if as a human being one develops the first concentration, but doesn't wish to be reborn in the form realm, but hasn't yet gone on to develop definite emergence, may one end up, against one's wishes, inadvertently being reborn in the form realm, as opposed to being reborn as a human being. A person who's wanting to achieve definite emergence, in order to do so, they will meditate well on the faults of the Four Noble Truths, and with that motivation will give rise to calm abiding or generate calm abiding. Having generated calm abiding, they will continue to meditate on the Four Noble Truths in order to achieve definite emergence. If death comes before definite emergence has been achieved, not having attained the first concentration, they will remain in the desire realm. So that would be the way that a practitioner would go. Someone else, though, who wants to achieve the first concentration, they would not want to be reborn as a human being because their method, let me look up the word, by examining the peaceful and coarse aspects of the desire realm and the first concentration, they would not want to be reborn in the desire realm. They'd want to be reborn in the first concentration. So they would be achieving concentration and then go calm abiding, and then go on to develop the first concentration. The practitioner, now to come back, to repeat what I said earlier, the practitioner who's wanting to achieve definite emergence wouldn't even spend the time going from achieving calm abiding to achieve the first concentration, because calm abiding is sufficient to achieve definite emergence and continue their spiritual progression.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no real risk of accidentally...
No, fortunately not.
Yeah, okay. Yes, that is.
Okay. And thank you, Venerable Lobsang.